Greetings, this is Jacques Haber with Mentorship Works, Entrepreneur in-house, conducting yet another interview with a regional success story in Bryan, Coryat. Thank you, Bryan, for joining us.
Great to be here, thanks.
Appreciate that. We're going to basically get to know Bryan and find out a little bit about what got you started in the technology and advertising world as an entrepreneur. Learn about some of your early mentorship experiences and some of your current mentorship experiences.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about your background, how you started, maybe where you went to school, and what led you to really develop ValueClick.
Okay, so didn't go to college. I was an electronic technician, studied and trained, and ended up moving to Santa Barbara in 1991. And in 91, I came to work for Raytheon over in Goleta, and we fell in love immediately with Santa Barbara. And my wife said, hey, we need to stay here. We need to stay here. I want to live here forever. And I agreed, but there was no way we could ever afford a house, because a house back then seemed like a lot of money. It was, $300,000. And I said, there's no way we're ever going to be able to afford a house. And she said, well, we need to figure something out. So I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'd always wanted to have my own business. Since I was a young child, really, wanted to do that. So when I was working at Raytheon, I had a pretty mindless job for a while there, and I was listening to a lot of business books and ended up starting my own business part-time in the afternoons and on the weekends with my wife, which was a direct marketing business back in the days when we used to mail brochures and things like that. Developed that into a 24-page catalog, and in '94 got introduced to the internet. And once I got introduced to the internet, it was obvious to me that in those days, my biggest costs were printing and postage. And I said, well, with this internet thing, we're not going to have to worry about printing and postage. But I just, had a pretty good sense on how to run businesses, how to motivate people, how to figure things out that other people haven't yet figured out. So we moved into the Granada building. AAA in our promotions grew very rapidly. We were able to buy our first house. I was able to leave Raytheon and grew that to probably 50 or 60 people, 2 shifts, people working at home. It was a pretty crazy time.
You went from 50 employees to 8, and it must have been a very challenging time.
It was a really challenging time because I'd started a business that I was the first one. We were the first business, the first paid directory listing service on the internet. And when we first started that business, in 2 weeks I had a 200 order backlog. And I doubled the prices. In 3 weeks, I had a 300 order backlog, and I doubled the price again. In 4 weeks, I finally started to stem the orders, and it was just off to the races. So it was the right place at the right time. But what happened was, because I didn't know anything about financing, I didn't have mentors in place to educate me on that, I basically got crushed by the competition. And I would say Bob Leppo really became my first mentor. Because that afternoon, he came to see me about WebIgnite, and he came over to my office at the Granada building. He said, this is really interesting what you're doing with this SEO. And I said, well, that's not really what I'm excited about. Let me show you what I'm excited about. And I showed him the ValueClick story. And I showed him the dashboard. And I uploaded the banner, which back in those days, I uploaded the banners. And I uploaded the banner, and I said, okay, now 2,000 people have seen that banner, and 220 have clicked on it. And now 4,000 people have, and right in front of his eyes, he saw the potential. So he said, well, I want to invest in your company. I said,
just like that?
Just like that. He says, I want to invest in ValueClick. And I didn't have any idea at the time how investments worked. And I said, well, Bob, that's great. I'm glad you're excited about it like I am, but I don't even know how investments work. And Bob Leppo spent the better part of the afternoon explaining to me how venture capital works, et cetera. And he spent at least 4 or 5 hours just explaining to me angel investing, venture capital investing, vulture capital investing, and everything in between. And I said, okay, that sounds great. So I want you to invest in the company. I understand how it works now. So what do you propose? And he took out his checkbook and he said, I'm writing a check right now in the amount of $50,000 and to Bryan Coryat. And he hands me the check, and I go, okay. And at the time, it wasn't that much money. I couldn't even pay off all the bills I'd accumulated from the downfall of AAA and the promotions with that. But, it's okay. 50 grand is 50 grand. And he says, you can take this check. I can raise $1 million for you within 6 weeks for this business. If I don't raise $1 million within 6 weeks, you can take this check and you can do whatever you want with it. It's your money. And I said, okay, so if you do raise the $1 million in 6 weeks, he says, I want to buy 5% of ValueClick for that $50,000.
That's a pretty good deal for you. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I thought, wow. I said, okay, so I see that. Well, the 50 grand is good, but you know, he's going to raise $1 million for me.
Right.
You know, and I'm going to have $1 million here in 6 weeks. And I never realized the value of venture capital at the time and angel capital. And I started to realize, wow, I don't need to worry about the next payroll. I don't even need to worry about payroll for 3 months. I can actually plan 6 months out. I can actually build something here. I started to realize that. So I said, okay, Bob, you've got a deal. So he neglected to tell me that I was actually the one having to raise the money and put together the dog and pony show and go back and forth to San Francisco every couple of days and pitch all these investors. But he made all the introductions, and in 6 weeks we did. We pulled together the first $1 million for ValueClick. And
that's fantastic. Yeah. So he basically established $1 million valuation in that office in the afternoon.
Well, actually, he made some money that afternoon. Because we raised money at a $3.5 million valuation.
Oh,
so
smart guy then.
So 6 weeks later, he had tripled his investment.
Wow.
Okay, and Bob is a genius angel investor. He's had lots of successful exits, and he's very connected as well. So
at that moment, I mean, this is a person who's you know, willing to write you a check. You've got some immediate comfort with him. How did you go from like just not knowing how any of this was going to work, not understanding valuations, not understanding sales planning, to developing the level of trust and the level of comfort that you had to accomplish to get him to really develop this mentor relationship with him?
Well, actually, he was the mentor at that moment, but he introduced me to my next most important mentor, who's still my mentor today, Jim Zarley. So one of these pitches that I went up to San Francisco, he took me to a company called Best Internet, which was an early ISP. And he brought me in, and he was an investor in that company, and there was a CEO named Jim Zarley that was there to turn around this money-losing internet venture. And I went into the boardroom, or actually into Jim Zarley's office, and he says, okay, you got 5 minutes, tell me what you got. And Jim Zarley's a pretty hardcore guy. He's just, you know, brass tacks. I said, well, here's what I got, and here's the chart, and here's how much money we were doing. He says, okay, well, what's your burn? I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, what's your burn? I said, how much money are you losing? I said, well, we're not, we're profitable. He says, what? I said, we're profitable.
Wow. And
Jim Zarley says, stay right there, don't move. And it turned out he was in a board meeting with Best Internet guys with his board, and he goes out and he takes his executives and his board, and he marches them into his office, and he says, tell them what you told me. I said, profitable. He said, you see, an internet company can be profitable. He says, I'm putting in $50,000 right now, and I suggest that you guys do the same.
So this is about what year was this?
This was 1996.
Okay, yeah, right when it was starting to come up.
It was just starting to come up.
What was it about Jim, his personality, his presence that really was a light switch for you? I want to learn from this guy. What was it about him?
Well, Jim has come from a turnaround CEO background. He built businesses, he had run businesses, and then where he was presently in his life, he was going into businesses where the investors weren't happy with the management team. They needed to turn it around. There was too much of a burn. They were running out of money. They wanted to fix it. And so he was very good at fixing things and very good at going into businesses and turning them around, making them profitable, merging them with another business, and creating a successful exit. And Jim is a great leader. He's a great thinker. He's great with numbers, and he understood so many things that I did not understand. So I started to spend, you know, probably 2 hours a week on the phone with Jim, and he became my mentor. And another guy named Steve Umberger also became my mentor. And Steve is one of the people that were on the board that also invested at the time. And me and Steve and Jim sat down and we penciled out on a yellow notepad the future of ValueClick, and we took it from, you know, $30,000 a month up to how are we going to get to $300,000 a month, and what's that going to look like, and who's going to be in place, et cetera.
The success of ValueClick is very well known,
Yeah.
certainly in the region and anyone who's in the tech and advertising world, nationally, internationally. What were, how did you develop it? How did it ramp up? And what were the, ultimately, where did that all take you?
So ValueClick went very quickly. We became a business in '96. We broke it out as its own company in '97 and raised the money. Okay, we went public in March of 2000. Okay, before we went public, thankfully I was able to convince Jim Zarley, my mentor, to be the CEO, because I didn't want to be the CEO of a public company, and he was a lot more qualified than I was anyway. The investors loved the idea. I loved the idea. So ValueClick went public. We raised $125 million
In the IPO?
In the IPO, yeah. And then it was kind of off to the races, except for that's when the dot-bomb hit. And Jim was the right guy to keep that company profitable and to actually grow the company over the next several years by acquiring companies that couldn't figure out how to be profitable, but they had great assets. So he helped me in the planning. He helped me in growing the sales team. I'd have these long conversations with him. He'd say, Bryan, you're going to need a CFO. I didn't even know what a CFO was. Figured out what it stood for.
Right.
Okay, and he said, okay, you need a CFO, and here's how you're going to find a CFO. And I do a search, and I send him some resumes. Nope, they're not a CFO. Nope, they're not a CFO. And he helped me to find a CFO, helped me to find a controller, told me when I would need it and why I would need it. So Jim is on my board today as well, and so is Steve Umberger. Okay, they invested in this company, and we are back to a mentorship mentee relationship again. And it's been 10 years when I was kind of semi-retired, and Jim was off running ValueClick, and he grew it to a $2.5 billion valuation. They have 1,800 employees in several countries. And so now he has grown the company to a level where I see this company going. And he came in as an investor, and it's making a lot more sense for him to invest and to be my mentor again. And Steve Umberger also is on the board. So those guys, I'm on the phone with them every week.
Every week, yeah. Now, in building ValueClick and to the point of going public, to the point of multi-billion-dollar valuations, this mentor relationship you had with both Jim and with Steve, what did they help you avoid? What kind of pitfalls, what kind of challenges did they help you avoid and overcome that are basically going to face any entrepreneur?
I think they helped me avoid getting off a plan, building a plan and not getting so stuck to it that you don't have flexibility, but to actually have a plan and to follow a plan. So one of the most valuable things that Jim Zarley taught me is to find out what is your break even. You need to get to a point in your company where you don't need venture capital. You can just go and you can grow organically and you can get to this break even point. And when you get to that break even point, you say, okay, so my break even point is maybe it's $300,000 a month. When I get to $300,000 a month, I have the team in place, I have the assets in place, I have the marketing budget, everything that I need to grow this company. But now I think I can grow it faster. So let's go out and raise $5 million and let's start to spend $300,000 a month additional and go negative $300,000 a month. But my effort should increase the top line and the bottom line revenue so that we come back to a break even or better at a much higher revenue base. So now you're breaking even to $600,000. And what that did by stepping the business up in that way, and this is one of the most valuable things that Jim taught me, it allows me to always go back to where I was before. So if now you're at the $600,000 a month level and you're breaking even, that's great. Now you establish that as your base. This is the team where I can grow fast. Now let's spend $1 million a month and get up to another level. And then if you run into a barrier or you run into unanticipated things that you can't quite overcome, you can always go back to the model where you were before.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so it's almost like you're creating like levels of stability and comfort and insurance before you actually graduate to the next level.
That's exactly right, yeah. And one of the things Jim loved to say was, you want to sleep at night, you want your investors sleeping at night. Once you're sleeping at night, everybody is a lot happier, you're growing your business, everything is stable. Of course, it takes a leap of faith to get to that first level.
In this current company, you've had some recent raises. We'll talk about that. But tell us about Local Market Launch. It's basically a really unique, local-focused SEO type of agency. And maybe you could tell us a little about your vision for it, how you're developing it, what's been going on the last few months.
Okay, so Local Market Launch has, of course, evolved, like most businesses do, and is somewhat different than when we started it 2 years ago. What we do is we make business location data readily available and findable on all platforms and devices. So through technology that we've developed and business relationships that we've developed, we work with national brands to take all their location data and to make sure that they have the right descriptions, the keywords, categories, photos, video slideshows, etc., and then we get them pushed out to all the major directories on the internet, all the navigation systems, all the major internet apps and Android apps and iPhone apps by pushing that through data providers like Localese, Axiom, Infogroup, Factual, and then helping them secure their listings on Google, Yahoo, Bing, Yelp, Foursquare, etc. So that's what we do today, and we deal strictly with agencies, multi-location businesses, national brands like Farmers Insurance, for instance, and we also deal with small businesses, but only through partner networks. So we partnered with 2 of the largest Yellow Page companies in the country, so that when they sell a Yellow Page ad and the small business wants to be on the internet as well, we take care of that piece. So we're really building the Yellow Pages of the internet.
And so this is still a startup.
This is absolutely a startup.
And now your role, it seems like now you've obviously very much appreciate being mentored and having those mentors that you can access, a couple hours a week. What about being a mentor yourself? I mean, your experience, and especially the way that you had to figure it out on your own without any classic education, has got to be very valuable to some of these younger folks in your company. Do you have those kinds of relationships?
Yeah, I would say I have that relationship with everybody in this company. And that's actually what I enjoy most. Thankfully, because of the Value Click win, I don't need to do this. I don't need to work. And it's not easy. It's not always fun. But the fun I get is watching younger people grow. And everybody in this company, we are 23 people, I think, today. Every person in this company is an entrepreneur. And when I say they're an entrepreneur, it's because they get up in the morning and they don't know what barriers they're going to have to overcome that day. To be an entrepreneur is to constantly and consistently overcome barriers, because every day there are barriers set in front of us that we need to overcome in order to build a great company. And I've got young women here that came to work for us a year or a little bit over a year ago, fresh out of school, and now they're running a department, And I've got a young man who's running a department, and he's interviewing, 7 people today he's interviewing. So he's growing a department, and I love to mentor them and to watch them grow. It's one of probably my greatest joy of running a company.
A lot of people, this is a Mentorship Works plug, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't have the situations that you had, where you got a guy interested in investing in you. He wrote a check that afternoon. You had the fortune of meeting someone up in San Francisco who wanted to invest, who was immediately ready to start raising money with you. How does how important is it to have a mentor when you're developing your business? And how do you advise people to look for a mentor? What do you advise them to look at, to avoid? What are some of the criteria you think are really key?
So I think that, to find a mentor, I've had mentors, and I have other mentors here in town, Jason Spivak and Bryan and Kevin O'Connor. I mean, I look to those guys when I need advice, Klaus Schauser as well, and have lunch with them. And it's a lot different when they have skin in the game, when they are an investor, when they are knowledgeable about the industry. So I think that it's really important to get an investor that can get excited about what you're doing. I've had people come to me, I have people come to me quite often actually, and ask me to mentor them. And if I can't get thoroughly excited about what they're doing, I'm not the right mentor for them. So I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to be able to sell their vision. And they are, of course, the best people to sell their vision because they are the ones who are most excited about it. And if they're most excited about it, they need to find people in that industry, or they need to find people that for some reason are also going to get excited about it, and they need to share that excitement. And then to give them, to get them some skin in the game, either through stock options or warrants, or get them to invest is, of course, the best way to do it. And then they have some real money in the game. But I know that there are several entrepreneurs in town that, you know, quietly mentor businesses and for stock options and things like that.
That's good advice. Well, Bryan, thank you very much. I think that sums it up. If there's anything further you think the audience would want to know about mentoring and mentorship, please let me know.
Yeah,
and,
well, I think you're never too big and you're never too great to have mentors. You know, Jim Zarley was here a couple of weeks ago and was mentoring me, and I learned from him, and I learn from him every time. So I think it's good for everybody.
And as successful as you are, that says a lot about just the kind of person and the kind of character you have. So congratulations.
And congratulations on Mentorship Works.
Thanks.
It's a great program.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you come out and do a larger in-person event one of these days.
Sure, that'd be fun.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.